What's up, gangsters? It is another fine day at Rube Goldberg Enterprises. And it is time for another installment of a two-part build review. And this one should be relatively quick because it's a relatively simple and straightforward project. And it is this, the Heller 1/24 scale Petite Grille te-20 tractor made by Ferguson. And this is really cool. I'm sure I've mentioned, I'm a farm kid and spent lots and lots of time on tractors. And one in particular, when I was a youngster, I spent a lot of time on was our Ford 8N. It has a front end loader on it, a bucket for the uninitiated. And so I was able to use it to build lots of little BMX jumps and, run a shredder behind it for cleaning up bar ditches and stuff like that. And the Ford 8N and 9N are very close cousins of the Ferguson te-20, which is why I bring that up. So this one is, although not the exact same tractor that we have, it's close enough to capture my imagination. And plus, there's just not a lot of tractor models out there. It's something that I really, really wish someone would do more of because they offer so much fun opportunity for weathering and creative detail work and things like that. So I was really stoked when this kit came out. I had never built anything by Heller. People had said, yeah, it's a little sketchy. But as you'll see, I was very pleasantly surprised with this. Honestly, one of, if not the most irritating thing about this kit so far is this silly box design. I'm not one to talk a whole lot about boxes because, hey, it is what it is, but I do like to be able to put my open boxes on the shelf here behind me so that I can easily stash my sprues and whatever other stuff goes along with that kit while I'm working on it. And if I've got more than one kit going on, then that makes it easy to stay organized. And can't really do that with this box unless you just cut the whole top of it off, which I suppose I could do if I were not so worthless and lazy. Anyway, that's my big beef with this kit. As you'll see, it is really actually pretty well executed, so let's take a look. All right, let's start out with the usual quick spin through the instruction sheet. And this is a nice little instruction booklet. They've done a pretty solid job with these. They give you a little bit of the history of the tractor itself, and I'll explain a little bit more why it's so significant here in a second. But this was a cool tractor. It did a lot to change farming in the years before World War II, and could be found on farms all over Europe, clear up into the 50s. And in the United States, its very close cousin, the Ford 8 and 9N, you can still find them on farms all over the place doing little odd jobs and light-duty work. And the reason why they're such close cousins is because Henry Ford actually partnered with old Mr. Ferguson on developing his tractor. And you can see where they discuss some of that right here in the front. And that's why they were such close cousins. Lots of common manufacturing techniques and things like that. But anyway, the instruction sheet is good. As you can see, the illustrations are nice and roomy. They didn't worry about not killing too many trees with this one. I like these instruction sheets because they're clearly laid out. They do a good job of showing the parts in a nice large size so that you don't have to use a magnifying glass just to read the damn instruction sheet. They show you pretty good detail. So I like that. And they are pretty logically laid out. One thing about something like this, though, is you don't have to go exactly by the instruction sheet. And that's good because if you're doing the strategy where you're going to build the entire thing and then paint it, which honestly you could do in a weekend, pretty easily of construction. I don't work that way with projects like this because of my painting strategy. There are places where you'd have a hard time getting good paint coverage in and behind things like levers and so forth if you just had it all completely assembled. So yeah, as you can see from my check marks, I'm kind of skipping around here and kind of working through it in the way that seems to make the most sense. But about 160 odd parts, I think. So, you know, it's not just dead simple. Some of these parts are pretty tiny. There's a few places where you have some options, like you can use 2 different steering wheels, there's 2 different seats. And part of the reason why you get those options is because a slightly different version of this tractor called the Ferguson FF30 is what it turned into in the years after World War II. So there are a few things that are a little bit different about it. You get 2 exhaust pipes, which is nice. You can see that. And I'll show you something kind of cool with that here in a second. And you get a really good set of parts for the 3-point hitch, which is right here. Now, the deal with this tractor and why it is so significant is because Ferguson was one of the pioneers of the 3-point hitch. And for you non-farmers, what the deal is with this is that instead of just pulling a plow behind the tractor where you're basically towing it with a hitch pin like you would on a trailer, the 3-point hitch connects to the implement in 3 places. Here, here, and here at the end of the drawbar. And that does 2 things. One is it lets you raise the implement up and down with complete control. So for something like a chisel or a moldboard plow, for those of you guys that really know your stuff, that is exactly what you want. And so when you come to the end of the field and you need to turn around, you just raise it up and spin around. That also makes things more compact than if you're towing something behind you. It also completely changes the balance of the plow. There were problems with these tractors early on when they were just using a tow type setup, with them flipping over backwards because the plow would get bogged down and the tractor would still try to keep going. And with being so much torque on the back wheels, it would basically just pop a giant wheelie and flip over backwards and possibly even kill the driver. So the 3-point hitch completely prevents that because it's like having a giant wheelie bar on the back of your tractor with that plow sitting back there. So it was a pretty important revolutionary development in the history of farm equipment. And that's part of the reason why I think they chose this tractor to model it. Anyway, here's one thing I always like, which is some good sprue maps. And you can see there's only 2 large sprues. They're actually in 4 subsections, but those are pretty clearly laid out. And then you get your color callouts. If you're going to do the early version, it's easy because it's gray. That's why it's called the petit gris, little gray tractor. But if you do the FF30, you can see it's a little bit prettier. And these are familiar colors for anybody who's ever owned or seen a Ford 8N or 9N, because these are the same colors that were used on them. So that's cool. You get that. You get a couple of small decals for the instruments, which is nice. So there you go. That's about all there is to say about the instruction sheet. Let's take a look at some sprues. What's left on them. I've been working away at this thing for about a week, and while a lot of that time has been spent doing some detail work that I'll show you, I don't have a ton of stuff left on the sprues, but you can definitely get a good idea of the quality here. As always, one thing that I look at with looking at molding quality is how much flash or witness marks from the parting lines you have on cylindrical sections. And you can see right here that it's pretty minimal. And that's, hopefully that'll focus. That's pretty true for almost all of the cylindrical parts in the kit. They look really good. You can see some more right here. You can see that those also look really good. Hopefully those are focusing. So that's nice because the cleanup on things like that is minimal. And there are quite a few little parts like that. You can see those right there, the throttle and the gear shift. You can see there. So there are quite a few of those, and you know that's always a hassle if you have to do a lot of parting line cleanup on stuff like that. So good molding quality. I'm impressed with the way that they handle their sprues in general. The sprue gates are pretty normal. They're not necessarily small, but none of them are in crazy places. I didn't have any issues with any of that, or any ejector pin issues. I have yet to run across a single place where I felt like I needed to deal with an ejector pin witness. The other thing I like is that the number of gates is appropriate. I mean, if you've watched any of my other stuff, you've seen, for example, the Mini-Art D7 bulldozer. You know that a part like that right there would have like 27 gates on it. Okay, well, maybe not 27, but maybe 7. So it's nice that that Heller has done a good job engineering their molding, their molds with that, with respect to that. The other thing is that this is a relatively soft plastic. It reminds me a little bit of Airfix plastic, both with the color and the hardness of it. And that softness is actually an advantage for parts like this because, you know, if you've ever built anything like the Mini-Art D7, you know that when parts like that are really brittle, that it's difficult to get them off the sprue without breaking them. So I think they did a good job with all of that stuff. I mean, all of this stuff is really pretty solid. You can see that the molding is really nice and crisp. When you look at things like that, for example, that's the lever that's used to raise the 3-point hitch up and down. And no flash. I haven't run into a single bit of flash anywhere on this thing. They also did one cool thing that I thought was worth pointing out. I mentioned that you get 2 exhaust pipes, and if you use the downpipe style, they did a really nice job of detailing it. You can see they've molded in the clamp on the one end of it there of the muffler, and they even gave you a little bit of a hollow. Come on, camera, focus up. A little bit of a hollow there at the end of the outlet, which they did by using a lifter in the tool. And you can see where that was right there because this is where that part was hanging on the sprue, and that hole in the side of the sprue is a lifter. Basically, it's just kind of a little L-shaped thing that sticks up in the tool, and as the mold opens, it withdraws and pulls out the core that makes the hollow in the end of that pipe. What's odd, though, is that for the other exhaust pipe, the vertical one, they didn't do it. Doesn't make any sense to me because they actually could have positioned the parts in such a way that they could have used the same lifter to do both exhaust pipes and given you a hollow tip on the vertical pipe as well. But the vertical pipe kind of was like the stepchild. It didn't even get really good details on it, as you'll see here in a second. Wouldn't have mattered because, as you'll see, I'm always going to replace the tip of a pipe like that with brass tubing anyway. So, you know, it is what it is. But if you are not going to do that, you'll have to drill it out yourself if you are looking for a more realistic appearance. So with that, let's just talk about these real quick. Tires. The tires are beautifully molded, but unfortunately they are vinyl, and pretty firm vinyl. So hopefully getting that mold flash out of there is not going to be too big of an issue. I've seen some where guys did actually do a nice job of kind of sanding these down a little bit and giving them a worn appearance, which I'm probably going to do a little bit. It is what it is. I mean, I'm hoping that paint will stick to these. I wish they were resin, but they're not. I wish someone would come out with some resin ones like they have for the Thunder Models case VAI, which I have over here. But as far as I know, they haven't, and so it is what it is. I also wish for that someone would do some resin ones for the fact that you could get the letters molded in, which Heller chose not to do. That just adds a lot of nice detail to a tire like this if you got that raised Goodyear lettering on there. But hey, it is what it is. You do get two different types of front tires, and I'm going to use these with the tread pattern like that. The others are just smooth, round tires, and they're kind of boring. So anyway, as you can see, I've done a lot of assembly. So you can get a better look at some of the details, and you can get an idea that even at 1/24th, this is about the same size as a 1/35th scale D7 bulldozer. It's just not a large tractor. I mean, if you stand next to it, the rear tire comes up to about your waist. So it's not a big machine. Little bitty 4-cylinder gas engine in this version, although they did also make a small diesel version as well. So you can see that one of the things that I, of course, was going to feel compelled to do was add some spark plug wires. Don't know if I'm super happy about these. They suffice, I guess. The wires I'm happy with. It's the plugs where they go on the caps where they go on the spark plugs. I don't know that I'm real thrilled about. I think I might have chosen to do that a little bit differently if I were going to do it again, but I'm not. But this has been a lot of fun. Now you can see I added a little dipstick there, a wire from the starter, the water temperature probe lead that goes up to the front there, as well as an oil pressure feed from down there on the side of the crankcase. The battery rests right up here. So, and there's a voltage regulator that's underneath that. So all those wires will terminate underneath there. On the other side, you can see I've done a lot of detail work on the exhaust pipe with the brass tubing there. I also have tried to model a basic U-bolt type clamp that was pretty common with some little bitty resin heads on there. Hopefully that looks the part. A little bit overscale maybe, but it's one of those things where you've kind of got a choice of do nothing and have it just look plain and boring, or do the best you can with things the size you've got and hope that it's not ridiculously out of scale. Did some wiring there for the alternator, as well as a fuel line to the carburetor. Now this gizmo here is part of the throttle and governor mechanism that runs off the front of the crankshaft. So this is not exactly how it is on the real thing, but you can see, I've just tried to basically cob together a semblance of it. You can see that it's got a linkage that runs underneath the exhaust header there and connects to the side of the carburetor. So just a little bit of evergreen stock for that. And I also made a flange for the exhaust manifold there. I have a little bit of cleanup to do on that. That's one thing where I did have a little bit of a beef with the way that they engineered it, because all there is, if you're just doing it out of the box, you'll see that not only did they not give you a flange on the manifold there, but all they give you to connect this U-shaped part of the exhaust to the manifold itself is just a pin and a hole, and the hole was a little bit off center, so it kind of blew out the sidewall of the manifold part, right in inside here. So making a couple of little flanges out of some sheet stock also helped cover up that problem. But the thing is, what they should have done to engineer that correctly, in my opinion, is to make it a square pin and a square hole, so that this exhaust piece is just basically falls into the correct orientation when you glue it together. The other place where they had a little bit of a blowout on a pin is right here. You can see this is where the toolbox attaches to this bracket, and you can see really close to the edge right there, and it kind of blew out, but that's not a big deal on that one. Also, one thing, since I'm talking about the dashboard here, is you'll see that there's a hole right there on top of where the steering column attaches. I added that hole, and I recommend you do that yourself, because that's where the throttle lever sticks out, and they don't give you any kind of a recess or anything right there to attach that to position it correctly. So I recommend just popping a 1mm hole through that, and that'll make your life a little bit easier. I also wish that they gave you some battery terminal clamps. I've ordered some from Detail Master, and I hope they end up looking cool. But this, if I had one overall beef with this kit, it would be that they just didn't give you enough detail. The detail that's there is nice and crisp, but they could have given you more. I mean, honestly, with 160 parts, if they had given you a 10% higher part count, they could have included some really nice little detail parts that would have done more than improve the coolness of the kit by 10%. So, kind of wish that they had done that, but hey, it is what it is, and I'm just glad that what they have done is as well executed as it is, because I've been really impressed with the fit of everything here. I've had very little fiddling to do. In fact, there hasn't been anything so far that didn't fit, and that's really nice. There's a few places where you have to deal with some seams if you really want a realistic appearance, like right here where the outboard part of the rear axle attaches to the center cases. And I really should have dealt with this before I got this far, but I kind of forgot. But there is a seam line there. There's a split in the two halves of that axle part. There's a seam line on the back side of the air cleaner there that has to be dealt with. But really, no major issues of that type at all. No fit issues whatsoever. Everything just really does just fall together in a very straightforward fashion. So I've been pretty impressed from that respect. One thing where they did make a little bit of a mistake is if you look, I'll show you here in the instruction sheet first. If you look at the way that the sheet metal for the hood goes together, you can see there's this little tab right here that they would suggest goes into some kind of a mating slot on the bottom of the top portion. And that would be fantastic if they had actually given you the slot for that tab to go into, because they did not. And you can see here on the back side of the hood there that they didn't give you anything of the sort. And so what I had to do, which was not a big deal, it just took me a second to figure it out, was I just snipped the tab off of the top of this piece right here, because it extends a couple of 3 millimeters down into this area right here, and there's just no way it can go together correctly if you leave that tab on there. So I had to snip that off, but that was not a big deal. This little subassembly of 4 parts for the hood goes together quite well, and part of the reason is because they made these pieces pretty beefy. You can see they're not trying to emulate sheet metal here, and that's fine because they don't really need to, and the parts go together well. So anyway, that's all really good. I think that overall that this kit is really well executed so far. It's been a lot of fun. The mold quality is good. The detail is crisp. The execution is nice. I wish it had more detail, but hey, I'm just happy that what's here is as good as it is, and that's been as much fun as it has so far. And as you can see, I'm pretty close to being able to move into some actual paint. So that's when things will get really fun. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I either forgot and remembered or discovered right after I finished the last segment, of course. So I thought I would just take care of those real quickly. One of the weird things about this kit that is kind of uncool is the headlights. Yes, they are in fact molded as solid chunks of plastic, and they don't give you any clear parts. They give you some goofy little clear decals that are supposed to go on those. So yeah, I don't know that I'm going to bother to try and hollow any of those out and try and make them work, because the truth is these things get knocked off of real tractors over 20 years, which is what I'm going to be, or 40 or 50 years, which is what I'm going to be portraying this thing as. So not a big deal there, but if you want the headlights, you will need to deal with that. Right after I said, yeah, no ejector pin marks, this little gizmo here that controls the elevation of the 3-point hitch has 3 ejector pin marks right on the back of it, and those are going to be visible. So I will be dealing with those. I also misspoke because right here in the instructions, where I was talking about adding the throttle lever, right here in step 43, you can see they don't really show you, like I said, where it's supposed to go, and you don't add the steering column until step 45. So you will probably, like me, even though I've already gone ahead and added the steering column, not realize until you get to that point that what they're trying to tell you to do is to stick the throttle lever right down there in that little notch right in front of the steering column. Of course, I've already drilled the hole. On the real thing, the lever's not quite that close to the steering column, so I think I'm going to go ahead and leave mine where it is, and probably just fill in that hole. I think that'll actually look a little better that way. So no big deal there. Something else, they don't do a really good job of telling you how part B6 is supposed to go on. They just don't give you a good angle to look at it. But that's it right there. It's this little fin-shaped part with the serrations on it. I'm not even really sure what it is because I don't see it on a lot of photos of real ones. But anyway, that's the way that thing goes on there. Now, I have also made a mistake here. They don't do a good job of telling you that you need to put the this piece and the sway bar that runs between here and the front axle on in a particular order. because, as you can see, the sway bar has well, again, let me just show you. In the instructions, the sway bar has a rod sticking out of it that plugs into that space. You can see that right there. You can also see the B6 part I was just talking about. So you can see that they don't really make that explicit. And the fact is that the way that these little parts are made, they kind of have to go in there at the same time, because the rod that's on the end of the sway bar has to fit into this little recess right here on this foot peg, and you can see that it's got a half round depression in there for that. And since I got a little ahead of myself and I went ahead and stuck that foot peg in there, I'm going to have a hard time getting the little rod on the end of the sway bar inserted in there. But not a big deal, because I can just cut it off and just glue it straight in there. You don't have to have the little rod. So, but just something to pay attention to when you get to that point. Seems like there was something else I was going to mention. What was it? Let me think. Talked about the ejector pin marks, the headlights, the little sway bar thing, and the throttle. Nope, that's it. That is truly it for this segment. Okay, so there you go. That's the first look at the or the first part of what will be a two-part build review on this little Heller kit. And as I think you can see, it's pretty impressive. And I think, I can't remember how much I paid for it. I think it might have been like $50. I honestly can't remember. You have to decide for yourself, if you think it's a good value. But if you are looking for farm tractor models, there's not a lot of choices out there, so it's good to know that somebody's doing one that is as nice as this one is. So stay tuned. If you're interested, in part 2 I will show the completed result and talk about how I do the painting and weathering. Alright, as always guys, I appreciate it if you're staying tuned in. Much love.